The late afternoon sun slanted low over the plains, washing everything in a warm, dusty gold. The heat shimmered off the barn roof, and the only sound was the rhythmic creak of a windmill turning somewhere beyond the corral. Clara May brushed the dirt from her palms, squinting toward the ridge where the horizon bent. She'd been waiting all week for the new ranch hand to arrive, someone strong enough to fix the fences, help with the cattle, and maybe bring a little peace back to this land that had felt too empty since her husband passed. Her back ached from the morning's work. She'd mended 2 sections of broken wire by herself and had nearly been thrown by a skittish colt that still missed its dam. Clara wasn't one to complain, but loneliness was a heavier load than a full day's labor. Folks in town had stopped offering help once the rumors began. Rumors that the Cartwright brothers wanted her land, that she was too proud to sell, that a widow living alone on a ranch this size was just asking for trouble. When she heard the faint thunder of hooves on the trail, her head snapped up. A rider was coming fast, the kind of rider who didn't meander but moved with purpose. As he drew closer, the sight made her catch her breath. He was tall, taller than most men she'd ever seen, and broad through the shoulders. His black Mustang kicked up dust as he slowed to a trot, the animal gleaming with sweat and muscle. The rider swung down in one smooth motion, boots hitting the ground with a solid thud. Clara's first word slipped out before she could stop herself. "You're a lot bigger than I expected." The stranger paused mid-step, then a small smile tugged at one corner of his mouth. His hat shaded his face, but she could see the humor in the curve of his lips. "Ma'am," he drawled, voice low and steady. "I reckon that's the first time I've heard that said as a complaint." Clara's cheeks burned. "I didn't mean—" She cut herself off, folding her arms in defiance. "Well, I suppose size doesn't matter if you can't handle a hammer or a horse." He chuckled, a deep sound that rumbled like distant thunder. "I can handle both just fine. Name's Cade Harper. Sheriff said you were looking for help. Someone who can mend fences and deal with trouble." The way he said that last word made her stiffen. Trouble. She wondered if the sheriff had told him about the night she woke to find her cattle gate swinging open, or the day someone left a dead crow nailed to her fence post. She hadn't told anyone the whole story, not even Sheriff Dugan. Folks talk too much in small towns, and she didn't want to sound like some frightened widow clinging to ghosts. She wiped her hands on her skirt, keeping her voice even. "Well, Mr. Harper, you found the right place. The fences are half falling, and I can't be in 2 places at once. You'll have plenty to do. I like work," he said simply, unbuckling his saddlebags. "And I like knowing who I'm working for." His eyes, clear and sharp as river glass, met hers. "You live here alone?" She hesitated, just long enough for him to notice. "For now," she said. "The ranch was my husband's, but I've been running it since he passed." He gave a slow nod, looking around the yard, the barn, the open land beyond. "You've done well keeping it this way, but someone's been making a mess of your fences on purpose. I saw the cut wire on my way in." Clara froze. "You saw that?" He nodded again. "Yes, ma'am. Clean cuts. Wire cutters, not wear and tear." Her heart thudded once hard. She wanted to brush it off, to tell him she'd fix it in the morning. But something in his tone, calm, matter-of-fact, made it impossible to pretend. "I'll tell you about it," she said finally. Her voice softer. "After you get settled. Supper's at sundown. If you're still here by then," he tipped his hat, one corner of his mouth lifting again. "Don't worry, ma'am. I don't scare easy." Clara turned toward the porch, trying not to let him see the faint tremor in her hands. She could feel his eyes on her back, not in a way that made her uneasy, but in a way that made her oddly aware of herself, of the space between them, of the quiet hum that had returned to the ranch for the first time in months. Inside the house, she paused by the window and watched him lead his Mustang toward the stable. Even from there, she could tell he moved with the kind of ease born from years of hard living. No wasted motion, no hesitation. A man who carried his past like a weapon and didn't talk about it. For the first time in a long while, Clara didn't feel quite so alone. But as the sun sank below the hills, she couldn't shake the feeling that Cade Harper hadn't just ridden in for work. He'd ridden into something darker, something that had been waiting, unseen in the long shadow of the plains. The storm rolled in fast, like a curtain of fury drawn across the sky. The wind howled through the trees, rattling shutters and snapping the clothesline clean in half. Clara pressed a hand against the window pane, watching Cade stride through the rain toward the barn. He'd gone out the moment he heard the horses snorting, muttering something about them being too restless for no reason. She had begged him to wait until the lightning passed, but he only gave her that calm, steady look and said, "If something's out there, it won't wait." Then he was gone, swallowed by the storm. Rain lashed against the house, the thunder rolling so close it shook the floorboards. Clara paced by the hearth, every nerve on edge. She could hear the faint whinny of the horses, the creak of the barn door, and then something else. A shout, low, muffled, but unmistakable. Her breath caught, and before she knew it, she was grabbing her shawl and racing into the night. The rain hit her like a wall, soaking her in seconds, but she didn't stop. The lightning split the sky wide open, and in that flash of white fire she saw them. 2 figures struggling in the mud beside the barn. Cade had one man pinned, his hands like iron around the stranger's wrists. The other man twisted and kicked, snarling like a cornered coyote. Clara froze, heart pounding. She could barely make out their words over the wind. But then she saw it, a glint of metal in the intruder's hand. A knife. Cade moved fast, twisting the man's wrist until the blade clattered into the mud. In one smooth motion, he sent the man sprawling face first into the dirt. "Found your fence cutter," Cade called, voice cutting through the storm like a whip. "Looks like he wasn't expecting me." Clara's boots sank in the wet earth as she ran toward them. When she got close enough to see the man's face under the lantern light, her stomach dropped. "Jeb Rawley?" she gasped. Jeb spat into the mud, rain streaking down his face. "You should have sold, Clara. Would have been easier for everyone." "Easier for you, maybe," Cade said, his tone hard and cold. "You've been cutting her fences, haven't you? Letting her stalk loose, trying to scare her off." Jeb sneered, struggling against the rope Cade was already tying around his wrists. "A woman doesn't belong out here alone. Should have learned that before you got your husband killed." Clara's hand flew before she even thought. The sound of the slap cracked louder than thunder. Jeb glared up at her, but there was no apology in his eyes, only hate. Cade yanked the rope tight, his jaw clenched. "Sheriff will deal with him come morning," he said. "For tonight he sleeps in the storeroom." Together they dragged Jeb inside, dripping water across the floorboards. Clara's heart was still pounding, her hands shaking. She'd never seen a man like Cade move, precise, sure, no wasted motion. He didn't brag, didn't bark orders. He just did what needed doing. And when it was done, he stood there by the door, soaked to the skin, the lamplight flickering across the planes of his face. She took a slow breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "You saved my life." He looked at her, rain still dripping from the brim of his hat. "Ma'am, I just did what needed doing. But you've got to understand, men like that don't quit easy." She met his gaze. "Then I suppose I'll just have to learn to fight harder." A faint smile tugged at his mouth. "Reckon I can teach you that if you'll let me." Clara felt something warm stir in her chest. A quiet strength she hadn't known was still there. Outside, the storm began to ease, the thunder fading into a distant growl. Dawn's first light crept over the hills, soft and golden against the drenched plains. Cade stepped beside her, eyes scanning the horizon. "Looks like the worst has passed," he said. She nodded slowly. "Maybe it has." For the first time in months, the ranch didn't feel haunted by loss. It felt alive again, and as the light spilled through the windows, Clara realized what truly stunned her wasn't the danger or the man who stopped it. It was how safe she felt standing next to him, as if the storm had carried him here just for her.